All right, welcome back, everybody, and thanks for tuning in to another accountant showcase. Very excited to have with us Donny Shimamoto, who's going to be sharing his story. And so let's get right into it. Donny, thank you for taking time out today. Please tell us about yourself.
Sure. Donny Shimamoto. I'm a CPA, but I'm a non-traditional CPA. And what that really means is I don't do audit, tax, or bookkeeping, which normally then people say, well, why are you a CPA? Because that's what CPAs do. But I really think of myself as one of these that is leading kind of the new brand of CPA or the new type of CPA, which are really those of us that help with, I think, two things. And this is the way I usually describe myself. One is really around innovation. Most people think of innovation as technology, but really innovation when we're getting into the organization itself requires changes in business practices, rethinking business processes, rethinking even digital transformation, so digital business models. So there's a big piece of that, and you can hear more of that business and finance probably starting to come in there. Then that is always balanced off with the other side of what we do, which is the risk management. Some people like to use the word enterprise risk management. A lot of people think enterprise means big. When I use enterprise risk management, I mean holistic. So we work, for example, primarily with small and mid-sized businesses, and we help them balance innovation and taking some risk with the actual risk management activities. So again, kind of the technology world, people think of that as cybersecurity, but we also look at organizational competencies. We look like now with this move towards hybrid work, we're looking at employee engagement risks, staff recruiting, retention, client service delivery, all kind of different aspects. Again, it's kind of this bigger holistic picture of risk.
Yeah, and I'm very glad that you mentioned it because it is just looked at as audit, tax, bookkeeping, but I mean, right here, perfect example of looking at it at, like you said, a holistic approach, but it's just always seemed like the deadlines and arduous, tedious, and there's a lot more to it. So how'd you get all started in this profession? Was it all throughout your family? Somebody inspire you? You just fell into this?
No, so I'm actually the first real business person per se in our family. Our family's a family of engineers, and my dad was actually a music teacher. And education. Actually, I have several aunts that are teachers, so kind of education and kind of your traditional engineer science has kind of been our family. But for me, the accounting came really easily. I took my first accounting course in high school. It was just very natural. I also took my first, well, actually, I first started playing with computers around probably 8 or 9. I used to make my own computer games and things. Luckily, I had an aunt that saw that potential, I guess, in me. And so between her and my dad, we had like the Commodore 64 and the Apple TE and that kind of stuff. But took some of those like technology programming classes in high school. And I was lucky to have I forget what it was called, but basically the summer before my senior year in high school, I actually did this work, almost like an internship, but as a high schooler with a company.
Yeah.
And I was lucky that controller was actually an accounting MIS double major when he went through school, and he was the one that was like, so, what are you thinking about doing? I said, well, I'm going to major in accounting, but I really love this tech stuff. And he said, well, you need to do this double major. And so he was the one that got me on that track, which I continued throughout college. I actually almost also completed a minor in computer science, so got a little more techie on that part. And then I was actually working in the IT space as an internship, 2 different internships, both one for programming, one for more help desk type of stuff while I was in college. One of those happened to be for Coopers and Lybrand, which gives people a feel for my age. And then that transitioned into a full-time staff offer. But when I was actually in this staff position, I was what they call the dual tracks. So I did both financial audit and IT audit. Did that for about 1.5 years. And then I got pulled onto the consulting side because, again, I was lucky that someone saw the potential of what I could do. Got pulled into basically Department of Defense consulting. So we were doing this big project for the U.S. Navy. That was actually this is another one where it's like people don't realize, I think, sometimes as an accountant we can go and do some really interesting things. So we were working for the Pacific Fleet based out of Pearl Harbor. I'm from Hawaii. So it was nice because I was home, but I was on this global consulting engagement where we actually had teams out on aircraft carriers, I think it was a destroyer out in the Persian Gulf. This is during the Persian Gulf time. My job was luckily more at the headquarters. So we were at the headquarters at Pearl Harbor. We were directing these different teams that were working on the ships in San Diego, up in Washington State as well. And we really just were overseeing everything. So, because of that, I actually got to go on an aircraft. I spent a week on an aircraft carrier because we went on site. I was to work with one of the teams, and because we were trying to optimize like how they actually operated, they were like, "You need to come and see what we do." So I went for a week.
Wow.
The carrier went out into the San Diego Gulf and was doing war games. So we got to see planes launching. We heard the guns firing. It was pretty cool. And
Yeah, surreal.
civilian like never would do that, but because I was involved in this, I got to do it.
Oh, look at this story. I mean, who would have thought this would ever be an accounting on airship carriers? I mean, I'm in New York City and we have the Intrepid here, and I mean the thing is just gorgeous, and it's older. I can only imagine what they look like now as
Mm-hmm.
far as the size and where they go. And so no, that's awesome. That really is. That's a whole different aspect of it. So then you so you've never, it seemed like you never really did any type of compliance work.
Oh no, I did audit, financial audit and IT audit. I've actually led the issuing of financial statements once. Um,
Where do you, over the last few years, that the profession in general to where it is now, you think it's progressed in the right way, it progressed in the wrong way, and kind of where do you see it going in the next, say, 2 to 3 years?
I think we're moving in the right direction, and this has been interesting for me. Kind of, to tell a little bit more of my story. When I left PwC because they were going to make me move to Virginia, and I said I'm not moving from home.
Yeah.
So I said, let me go. So I actually went and worked at our largest systems integrator in Hawaii. So went full into the IT side. Found really quickly that I like that. They were structured. They weren't as, I'm going to use the word thoughtful because it's a very narrow kind of view of what we're doing. We're doing this programming, we're building this system, and it wasn't the bigger picture of what business strategy or how can we improve the organization as a whole. So really within a year, I split and I started my own firm. And so this year actually makes our 20th year in business.
Wow.
Originally, we were an IT consulting firm, but I quickly realized that the value of what we did was tied back to the CPA. It was the way I always competed. I would tell people, I won't just bring you a system. I'll bring you a system that is solid, has the right internal controls, and also that you can trust me with all this data because my CPA requires that I uphold this certain level of ethics.
Hmm.
I say that because that's the advisory component, which is what everyone in the profession for like at least the last 10 years, maybe 15 years, has been like, you need to move into advisory, you need to move into advisory. And I realized like that's the whole of what we do. It's been advisory, for 20 years. So, and we are registered as a CPA firm in Hawaii. So we are that actual next generation of CPA firm. Most of our work is consulting. A lot of people will say, well, that's not sustainable. Here we are 20 years, quite sustainable if you do it right.
Right.
Is you're this advisor that helps get people through all of the change.
Yeah.
And it's also working, it brings these exciting opportunities. Not when you're in the accounting and you're only working with dollars, you're kind of in this narrow niche.
Yeah.
But as you go out, so we get to see like the factories, the manufacturing that's occurring. We work with nonprofits, we get to see kind of what they do. to me, it's a lot more rewarding because you actually, go on the aircraft carrier, not just from a personal experience standpoint, but you really get to see the whole operations of the client.
Hmm.
And through that, you can then bring them these like, well, how about this? Because this other industry does that this way, or
Right.
does what you're trying to do this way, and it works for them. And so that's a lot of what we do is look for these patterns in how is a particular problem being tackled, and how do we customize that with the right balance of innovation and internal controls to make it work for another client.
Hmm. Hmm. So it seems that, yeah, you've been, as folks are now moving virtual, remote, advisory, you've been doing this, I mean, your whole career. And so for sure, you've been, ahead of the time, and now the profession's kind of thrown into this, and now you're able to kind of provide guidance and how to get this, effectively off the ground because you've done it. And so, where do you see the profession moving towards in the next few years? Do you see it kind of stalling out? Do you see it still progressing at a fast pace, or um, where do you think this will go?
We definitely see the acceleration. I'll tell you that so we normally work with small and mid-sized businesses, and it was maybe 8 years ago that we started having accounting firms start to approach us saying, "Hey, we
Yeah.
see that you're doing that with other like for-profit businesses and nonprofits. Can you do that with us?" And we would always tell them like, "Well, we're not. That's not our industry, but we're happy to try and work with you." And so we've been doing it, and now the accounting firms are actually our biggest growth segment over the last year. So I look at it as the benefit of the pandemic that we had all these technologies, Zoom, for example, that we're there. Is Skype for Business, right? And for example, instant messaging, we've used that since it was AOL Instant Messenger. So the whole time we've been in business, instant messaging has been our working platform.
Yep.
Uh, I think all of what's happening is for firms to adopt these technologies, which also helps to alleviate staffing issues we're seeing. I know you guys play a big role as well, in outsourcing and being able to find the right talent. And it's, to me, again, the balancing of the two,
Yep.
technology and talent, to really bring a holistic solution together. And the nice thing with me coming from the IT side is that IT has already gone through this. So if you think about the IT outsourcing movement that was in the 2000s or maybe even the late 90s, right? That really was kind of started the outsourcing movement. Is like, we can get all this IT and push it out. And I think in accounting, we're lucky that IT industry has already gone through that. The whole concept of like capabilities maturity model or CMMI, um, that is coming into play now. So the things that we already know to do on the IT side, to bring that in accounting, which should actually accelerate accounting doing it rather than having to figure everything out from scratch. So I do see in the next 2 to 3 years that see this increased adoption of outsourcing, increased adoption of technology, and through that, freeing up the profession's time to move away from more compliance into this advisory space.
Yep. Well said. Yeah, I agree. I remember I've been doing this 4 years, and 4 years ago, as soon as I said the word remote staff or offshore staff or virtual staff, it was like, whoa, sorry, we can't do this. They 50% of the calls couldn't conceptualize it. And come now, it's like, okay, we could do this. That means we can now hire in any aspect and within our firm, and we can bring on workers outside of our geography, or sorry, our state, our city, our country, as long as they're a good fit. And so I absolutely agree that without technology, I mean, we wouldn't even be here today, right? So you can love it or hate it, but you got to embrace it.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
any expert tips before we wrap up today? Anything you'd like to share with our audience?
I think it's just to keep being open to things, to really think about, maybe start from a blank slate and just think, if you were to be starting whatever it is you're doing, and rather than taking the manual and trying to take that into the digital, think about how would you do if you were just starting it today? What would it look like? And potentially using that as a base for moving forward rather than trying to, retrofit something. That's probably the biggest mistake that we see clients make.
Trying to reinvent something when really it's right there. So,
Well,
um,
it's more like, you don't want to, the way you conduct a manual process is not the way you want to conduct a digital process. So, good example, like approving a bill, like manual processes, I take the physical bill that I got in the mail, right? And I route it to each person's inbox on their desk. Uh, we don't necessarily want that concept. We want it moving digitally and flowing and being able to see where something is, right? And having the approvals documented that way. So even sometimes we see people like, well, we just email it all around, and you end up with the same problems, which is there's no visibility into it. We don't know where it is, who approved it when. I got to go find it in somebody's inbox, and hopefully they're still with the company, that kind of stuff.
true. Yeah. Yeah. It's a waste of time right there. So besides being an awesome CPA and helping out firms all over the world, what do you like to do for fun outside of work?
For me, it's food. So anyone that's like on my Facebook or things knows that food really is the thing for me. To me, it's both the enjoyment of the food, but the more the opportunity it gives to really get to know someone. So that's probably what I missed the most from the pandemic, is just being able to sit down with people and have a meal and kind of shoot the breeze and understand what's going on, and while at the same time kind of helping them maybe experience something different. So that's the with a friend, for example, we just had some friends come in this weekend, and they were like,
You
we're
cook?
at your mercy, just like come and choose a thing for us. And I'm like, well, just tell me food restrictions, tell me the right thing, and I'll choose something, preferences, and I'll choose something that's not going to be too crazy for you, but that we can all enjoy.
You cook yourself?
Once in a while, not as often anymore.
See, I learned two things during the pandemic: how to cut my hair and how to cook. I found out I like baking because I like
Ah,
sweets. So if you ever want a nice carrot cake, I'll bake it.
oh yeah, I like carrot cake
From
actually.
scratch too. Yeah. I mean, the pandemic, it's so unfortunate, everything that has happened. And I mean, I'm in New York City. It's starting to, cases going up again. But when you look at it and you find opportunity to make out of this mess and really push forward and be positive and have an open mind, I mean, things will be fine. Things will be fine. And we have a lot more resources and tools now. And then for the industry, for sure. I mean, the tools have been there. Now they're starting to become adopted, like you said. And I mean, you could really accelerate this industry and bring in more folks and realize that there's so much more to do than just putting in numbers. So,
Yeah,
um,
and I think you hit the key on that, though. It's the perspective, right? It's a glass
yeah.
half full, because I see so many people starting to focus again on, oh, things are happening, we're gonna have to shut down, and it's like, well, what are the benefits? So benefit of the pandemic was that we all learned to be a little more domestic, maybe disconnect some more, hopefully. Maybe some hidden talents, like you said, that you never knew you had before. That maybe, so like I enjoy like baking with kids. So like my niece and nephew, one time with them, it was like, hey, let's bake together, and to introduce them to that kind of stuff, rather than, okay, let's go to this soccer game, okay, let's go and do it, let's go do it, right? It's just like this, we're all in this busyness, but because we're stuck at home, take the time and reconnect some more.
Yep. Spot on. Agree. Thank you again for taking time out and sharing their story today. Love it. Can easily relate. Folks out there, thanks for listening in. We'll be back soon with another guest. But for now, take care. Donnie, thanks again. Take care.
Thanks for having me.